We got another crash out, man.
I'm so tired of it. It just makes no sense to me, and I'm tired that we keep giving it so much energy.
This is crazy, man. We have to revisit a crash out.
And I'm tired of it being people who are not in this circle or space at all who suddenly have all these opinions about how these women need to treat Caitlin Clark.
You are right. You are right, new fans.
What do you want from them? They want to beat her because she's not on their team.
Talked about that earlier in our pod today. You actually were quoted somewhere saying this is the first time you have zero fear around the league folding.
Isn't that how it's supposed to be? Yeah. Y'all stop it. We already know she's transformational. They've all said it. How many times do they gotta say it?
The soundbite is visceral, dripping with a fatigue that transcends physical exhaustion. We got another crash out, man. I'm so tired of it. It just makes no sense to me. And I'm tired that we keep giving it so much energy. The voice is one of a WNBA player, a veteran, likely someone who has grinded through the quiet years, the empty arenas, the financial uncertainty. The crash out she references isn't just a playoff elimination, it's a metaphor for a season that felt like a series of self-inflicted wounds, a constant, draining conflict that played out not just on the hardwood but in press conferences, on social media panels, and in the fraught space between a league and its exploding fan base. This sentiment, this palpable frustration, echoes through the locker rooms and media circles of the WNBA in the wake of what should have been an unambiguously triumphant year. Because the 2024 season, by every external metric, was a historic breakthrough. It was the year the dam finally broke. Ratings shattered records. Arenas from Phoenix to Washington, D.C. sold out, often for the first time in franchise history. Jerseys flew off shelves, led by one name in particular. Major sports talk shows, the ones that had for decades relegated women's basketball to a cursory...
...are turning against you. They see all the things the WNBA been doing, like giving y'all housing, paying for y'all babies, giving y'all cars, all types of stuff. Y'all are losing the people. Rebecca Lobo sets the record straight.
90-second segment. We're now dedicating entire 40-minute blocks to debating pick-and-roll coverage and rivalry narratives. The league had spent 28 years asking, pleading, for this level of mainstream attention. And finally, emphatically, it arrived. Yet, instead of a unified victory lap, the season was punctuated by a persistent, discordant note: resentment. A vocal contingent of players, media personalities, and a segment of longtime fans seemed not just wary of the new wave, but actively antagonistic toward it. The source of this tension was as identifiable as the source of the growth: Caitlin Clark. Clark, the collegiate phenom from Iowa, entered the league as a transformational force. Her deep-range shooting, visionary passing, and competitive fire had already redrawn the map of women's college basketball viewership. Her transition to the professional ranks was less a debut and more a seismic event. She was a walking audience catalyst. Wherever she played, the game became an event, a national television fixture, a conversation starter. And herein lay the central, painful contradiction. The very energy...
You are right. You are right, new fans. There has never been more viewership because of Caitlin Clark. There's never been more attention. They're doing 40 minutes on First Take about Caitlin Clark. They never did that before.
Hey, and you know what? And you know what they're not doing now, Elle Duncan? They're not doing 40 minutes on the WNBA when Caitlin Clark wasn't playing. They weren't doing 40 minutes on Colin Cowherd when Caitlin Clark was hurt and wasn't playing. They're not doing 40 minutes on Unrivaled on Nick Wright. First things first. They're not doing 40 minutes on Unrivaled with all these other stars y'all claim. Everybody's a star. The Paige Beckers, the big stars. Why ain't First Take talking about them?
Propelling the league to new heights was being framed by some within its ecosystem as a corrosive force. The new fans she brought, often younger, many male, viewers from the football and NBA audiences who were discovering the WNBA for the first time, were not celebrated as converts, as the lifeblood of a sustainable future. They were, in the eyes of some guardians of the league's culture, interlopers. Their fandom was questioned, their knowledge tested, their motives scrutinized. They were accused of only caring about one player, of ignoring the league's rich history and established stars, of sucking the life out of the very entity they were tuning into in record numbers. This cultural clash reached its peak in a now infamous ESPN segment featuring commentator LaChina Robinson and, crucially, former player and media voice Elle Duncan. As Robinson rightly pointed out the unprecedented coverage, they're doing 40 minutes on First Take about Caitlin Clark. They never did that before. Duncan pushed back with a take that would come to symbolize the season's defensive posture. She dismissed the value of that coverage, arguing that it wasn't real investment in the league, but merely a parasitic fascination with a single individual. They're not doing 40 minutes on the WNBA when Caitlin Clark wasn't playing, she countered, as if the presence of a superstar driving interest was a novel or illegitimate concept in sports. The moment was a profound miscalculation. It framed growth as a zero-sum game. It treated the audience as a problem to be managed, rather than an asset to be nurtured. And it exposed a foundational misunderstanding of how sports media and popularity function. Networks cover what people watch. They always have. The attention wasn't a charity. It was a market response. For the first time, the WNBA was triggering that response at a mass scale. And instead of leaning into the mechanism, a faction within its ranks seemed intent on dismantling it. To understand the depth of this backlash, one must appreciate the WNBA's historical context. For over a quarter century, the league operated in a state of precarious survival. It was a labor of love, sustained more by the financial backing of the NBA and the sheer will of its players and most dedicated fans than by robust profitability. It cultivated a tight-knit, almost familial community, a circle where players and fans knew each other, where the fight for visibility was a shared struggle. This history bred a powerful, insular culture, one rightfully proud of its resilience and its values: social justice, collective uplift, and a pure, unadulterated love for the game. Caitlin Clark's arrival, and the tsunami of attention that followed, didn't just expand this circle. It threatened to redefine its very boundaries. The new fans didn't arrive with a shared understanding of the struggle. They hadn't earned their stripes by watching grainy online streams of games from the 2000s. They arrived because of a highlight reel, a viral moment, a singular talent. To some veterans, this felt like cheating. It felt like the deep, decades-long cultural credit they had built was being overlooked in favor of a shiny new object. Furthermore, the narrative focus on Clark was undeniably intense, and at times, clumsy from a media still learning how to cover the league. The Caitlin versus the world framing, the constant questions about physical play, the elevation of her above all others, this was understandably grating to players who had been all-stars for years. Aja Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas, and countless others were putting up historic MVP-level seasons. Yet the national conversation often orbited around Clark's rookie struggles and successes. The frustration with media bias was legitimate. However, this frustration too often spilled over onto the fans themselves, who were simply following the narrative the broader sports world was presenting. The core error was a conflation of cause and effect. Clark was not the cause of other players' underappreciation. She was the effect of a media ecosystem that had finally been forced to pay attention. The spotlight she brought was harsh and narrow at first, but it illuminated the entire stage. The correct strategic move was to step into that light, to use the amplified platform to showcase the league's incredible depth of talent. Instead, many chose to critique the angle of the spotlight itself, blaming the new viewers for not knowing where to look rather than expertly guiding their gaze. This created a toxic dynamic for the incoming fan. Imagine tuning into a new sport, buying a ticket, engaging on social media, only to be met with a barrage of gatekeeping. You only care about Caitlin. You don't know the history. Where were you 5 years ago? This messaging, repeated implicitly and explicitly, carried a clear subtext. You are not truly welcome here. Your fandom is conditional and suspect. For any consumer, but especially for a sports fan with endless other entertainment options, this is a powerful deterrent. Support does not thrive in an atmosphere of critique. The consequences of this alienating posture did not take long to materialize. As the playoffs concluded and the off-season began, the cracks in the foundation widened into fissures. Two major developments laid bare the cost of the season's contentious tone: the troubled launch of the unrivaled off-season league and the escalating, publicly acrimonious labor negotiations.
Talked about that earlier in our pod today. You actually were quoted somewhere saying this is the first time you have zero fear around the league folding, right? Which I totally know what you mean. It's like in other negotiations, there was always not like it was actually going to fold, but it was like, hey, we got to figure this out. How are we going to do this? Kind of a vibe. All right. So from your perspective, what should be like the high priorities for this agreement?
It's been interesting to kind of see how it has all evolved. And one of the things that strikes me is like the deal that, as you read it, that the owners have on the table for the players. And, I'm not privy to all of the information, but like, it looks like a pretty amazing deal. And that, like, if the players took the deal that's on the table right now, they should feel great about it because it's huge salaries. It is a degree of revenue sharing. It's going to allow the owners to continue to invest in the product. I mean, having a practice facility, having all the things that Sue and I, you played all, and I played all those years without. Like, my New York Liberty team practiced at the
Unrivaled, a new off-season showcase founded by stars like Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, was conceived as a bold, player-empowered venture. It was meant to capitalize on the summer's momentum, provide additional income and visibility for top players, and prove the marketability of the league's stars beyond the WNBA structure. Yet, its early television ratings were dismal. Broadcasts on major networks drew audience numbers that could only be described as disappointing. The stark reality became impossible to ignore. A significant portion of the massive audience that had tuned in for Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever games had no compelling reason to watch a league where she was not involved. This wasn't a commentary on the talent of Stewart, Collier, or anyone else in Unrivaled. It was a brutal lesson in star economics. Superstar power is non-transferable. Michael Jordan drove ratings. Tiger Woods drove ratings. Caitlin Clark drives ratings. This is not a slight against other professionals. It is the fundamental market dynamics of individual sports and sports-adjacent entertainment. The failure of Unrivaled to capture the mainstream audience demonstrated that the league's growth was still fragile, still overly reliant on its most magnetic draw. The new fans, it turned out, weren't WNBA fans in the abstract yet. They were fans of a compelling product, and Clark was its most potent ingredient. By treating these fans with suspicion, the league had failed to convert them into holistic supporters. Simultaneously, the Collective Bargaining Agreement, CBA, negotiations turned publicly contentious. The players, rightly seeking a larger share of the league's growing revenue and better working conditions, took their message to the public with WN Bachelor of Arts, PA, and Pay Us What You Owe Us t-shirts during All-Star Weekend. Initially, the fan support was strong. The cause was just. However, the strategy began to backfire due to a critical disconnect in messaging and perception. This is where the voice of Rebecca Lobo became pivotal. Lobo, a Hall of Famer, a foundational player from the league's inaugural season, and now a respected broadcaster, occupies a unique space of immense credibility. She lived the lean years. She played in half-empty arenas, traveled on commercial flights, and witnessed the constant fear of the league folding. From this perspective, she offered a sobering analysis that cut through the escalating rhetoric. In interviews, Lobo pointed to the deal on the table from ownership, a deal featuring maximum salaries soaring past $1 million, average salaries approaching $500,000, revenue sharing, and significant investment in charter flights, practice facilities, and childcare. By any objective measure, compared to the WNBA's historical financial reality and even its current revenue, this represented a monumental leap forward. Lobo called it a pretty amazing deal. Yet, some players and their representatives were framing the offer as a slap in the face. When fans, many of whom earn a fraction of these proposed salaries, heard multi-$100,000 offers described as insulting, a visceral disconnect occurred. The empathetic bond between player and fan, always crucial in labor disputes, began to fray. Lobo warned explicitly that the tone of the negotiations was pushing public sympathy away from the players and toward ownership a nearly unheard-of shift in sports labor history. This shift was compounded by the All-Star game itself. After the powerful shirt protest, the game that followed was a notorious dud, lackluster effort, minimal defense, a poor product. Fans who had just rallied behind the "pay us" message felt whiplash. The juxtaposition was damaging. A demand for greater investment paired with a showcase event that seemed to lack investment from the participants. The subsequent booing of Commissioner Kathy Engelbert in Las Vegas was a raw display of the fan base's fractured and frustrated state. The commentary from Elle Duncan months earlier now resurfaced, not as a lone hot take, but as the archetype of the mindset that led to this precarious moment. Her claim that new fans were sucking the life out of the league had aged with spectacular poorness. It was a perfect inversion of reality. The new fans were the lifeblood. Their absence, as seen in unrivaled ratings and a general cooling of the regular season's white-hot buzz, was what now threatened to drain the league's vitality. Duncan's error was philosophical. She viewed fandom as a static entity, a curated community with fixed rules. The influx violated those rules. But sports leagues are not museums. They are living, breathing businesses that must grow or wither. The casual fan is not the enemy of the real fan. They are the essential gateway to sustainability and expansion. Every dedicated fan was once a casual fan drawn in by something: a player, a playoff run, a storyline. By framing Clark's superstardom as an illegitimate shortcut, this mindset failed to grasp a basic tenet of sports history. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson didn't just play basketball. They saved the NBA by creating a nationally compelling rivalry. Michael Jordan didn't just score points, he globalized the league. They were gateways. They brought in the casual viewers, who then fell in love with the game itself, with Scottie Pippen and Isaiah Thomas and Charles Barkley. The star is the entry point. The quality of the league is what makes them stay. The WNBA, in its long struggle, had never had a cultural entry point of this magnitude. And when it finally arrived, a faction within its walls seemed embarrassed by it, resentful of its source. They wanted the growth, but on their own terms: organic, distributed, historically literate. But growth is messy. It is unequal. It is driven by phenoms and narratives that cut through the noise. To dismiss the mechanism of your own breakthrough is not principled. It is self-sabotaging. The current state of the WNBA is one of paradoxical crisis. It is financially stronger than ever, with a transformative media rights deal on the horizon and franchise valuations skyrocketing. Yet, it faces a perilous erosion of the goodwill and excitement that just last season promised a new era. The league is staring down a potential lockout with a divided and disillusioned fan base. The path forward requires a deliberate, humble course correction, and Rebecca Lobo's interventions provide the blueprint. First, acknowledge the catalyst. The league and its players must collectively and publicly embrace the Caitlin Clark effect for what it is: the single greatest accelerant of growth in WNBA history. This doesn't mean diminishing others, it means contextualizing her role honestly. Thank the new fans she brought. Welcome them without caveats. Second, master the narrative. Players and their unions must understand that public negotiations require careful messaging. When discussing multi-$100,000 salaries, frame the argument around value and future growth, not present-day hardship that sounds alien to the average supporter. Connect the demand for a greater revenue share to a commitment to grow the pie for everyone, including through fan-friendly initiatives and relentless promotion of the product. Third, convert, don't chasten. The marketing energy should be focused on introducing the new Clark fans to the Breanna Stewarts, Aja Wilsons, and Alyssa Thomases of the world. Showcase their stories, their rivalries, their greatness. The goal is to transition the single-player fandom into league-wide fandom. This is a sales job, and the customer is not wrong for where they started. Fourth, embrace the mainstream playbook. The WNBA is now in the big leagues of sports entertainment. That means understanding that star power drives narratives, that physical rivalries sell tickets, and that media will focus on what gets clicks. Work with these dynamics, not against them. Shape the narratives rather than complaining about them. The bitter lesson of the 2024 season is that momentum is not a right, it is a fragile gift. The WNBA was handed a generational opportunity, a bridge to a vast new audience, built by a once-in-a-generation talent. For a moment, it seemed the league hesitated, scrutinizing the architect of the bridge and questioning the motives of those crossing it. Some even tried to light the bridge on fire. Rebecca Lobo stands now, pointing to the smoldering planks, urging a return to sense. The new fans weren't sucking the life out of the league. They were its lifeline. The apology ode is not necessarily a personal one from every critic, but a structural one from the league's culture. An apology embodied in changed behavior, in open arms, in a recognition that the long-awaited moment has arrived. And it looks like a 22-year-old from Iowa and millions of people watching because of her. The choice is stark. Steward this momentum with strategic grace, or preside over its crash out. The energy spent on resentment could instead be spent on the far more rewarding work of building a legacy that lasts.